Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. I hope the day is treating you kindly. If you're new here, my name is Latte and I'm really excited to have you here because today we're going to be making one of my dream builds. I have been wanting to make one of these for so long and it's a lavender field. So this is going to be put next to the orchard and it's also right next to the Crescent Moon Lake. I'll leave a link to those in like the little cards if you want to check those builds out. And it's also going to be incorporated into my house build. Since I don't have a lot of the purple hyacinths which we're going to be using for the lavenders, I figured it'd be best to sort of incorporate it into a house build so that way I don't have to worry about not having enough lavender. So first thing we're doing is setting up the house plot. It took me a couple of tries to figure out exactly where I wanted to put it, but I'm pretty happy with where I ended up choosing it in the end. For my house exterior, I decided to go with something a lot more neutral. You see it when I time travel, since I was having some difficulty with how I wanted to place everything since it wasn't fully built yet. And the reason why I made it quite neutral is so that way it doesn't compete with the lavender field, and I also went with a simpler yard for that reason as well. I didn't want it to compete with the lavender field since I wanted that to be the showstopper of the build and all the focus should be on that. So we'll see if I end up deciding to change it up later on. Sometimes I get bored of the house exterior from time to time, so it might change in the future, but for now this is how it's staying. And we're going to zoom through the pathway placement. I didn't really do a lot of terraforming for this build. I've just made a pond, which you'll see in a little bit, but I didn't end up building any cliffs or anything like that since it is a pretty open area, and I am considering putting some cliffs in front of this build potentially, so we'll see how that goes. By the way, if you like any of the custom codes that I've used in today's video, I'll leave codes for them in the description box so that way if you want to use them for your own islands you can. I'll be completely honest with you guys, this was one of those builds that was a very interesting experience doing it because I knew what I wanted but I didn't know what I wanted it to look like, and I didn't really know what I was doing because as you can see right now, I'm making this pond, but I ended up destroying it because I realized that it was going into the pathway that leads up to that central tree and that central little area where I have in front of the orchard, so I ended up destroying it. And then when I was putting down the lavender field, I had an idea of how I wanted to do it, but I didn't know where to put it, and because it is such an open area, I didn't really have any sort of confinements to work within, so I was really struggling with the placement of a lot of stuff. So you're going to enjoy watching me struggle for a little bit. After we put down this tree, we are starting on the lavender field, so I put down my first line of hyacinths as a guide, and we are going to be making this into a diagonal field because I've seen this design feature so often that I really wanted to incorporate it onto my island as well. And I really love that there is a little bit of space between all the flowers, so it doesn't look too overwhelming but it still looks show-stopping anyways. Also, if you plan to add this sort of design to your own island, I highly recommend you use the pathway placement tool and dig holes for your flowers and put them in that way, because I struggled a lot trying to do it just through my phone because that's normally how I prefer to do it. But for this build, because of how specific you need to put the placements of the pathways and the flowers, I highly recommend you use the pathway placement tool. It was at about this point that I realized that something was going wrong, and I was making the field a little bit longer and longer as I did each line. So I decided to try out putting the lavender field on the left side and replace the pond with it. So I'm just testing that out right now. In the end, I didn't really like the way that it looked, so I put everything back on to the right side and I ended up putting up a fence so that way I knew where the end of this field was. But I did warn you near the beginning of the video that this build was a little bit of a hot mess. As I was putting the hyacinths on the left side of the house, I realized that it wasn't as pretty as it is on the right side, so I'm picking all of this back up. One of the things that I liked about having the hyacinths and the lavender field on the right side with the house in the background is that it sort of off balances it and it makes it look really pretty. I messed up the placement of the trees since I wanted to extend out the pathway a bit, so I ate a couple of peaches so that way I got superhuman strength. And I'm fixing up the placement of the trees so that way it feels more like a forested walkway and it kind of borders the two builds and makes it separate. Okay, so I'm not too sure why I picked up this tree because I ended up putting it back in the exact same position, so please ignore that. And I'm putting down the fence like I mentioned before. I'm using the barbed wire fencing because I wanted the lavender, sorry, it's the hyacinths, but I'm gonna keep calling it lavender because it's a lavender field. I wanted them to be able to be seen through the fencing and I didn't want the fence to block it. And because this is the most see-through fence we have, I chose that. And then after I had confinements to work with, I found this build so much more easier to do and I was able to properly decorate. I also decided to move one of my villager houses next to mine because there was that empty space that is right off the lavender field and I didn't really know what to put there, so we will be moving a villager house there in a little bit. I also remade the pond. The shape is a little bit more weirder than the one that I had previously, but I feel like it works. I'm thinking of making it into more of a lake down the road, but it just depends on what I decide to do in front of this build. Oh yeah, and also I didn't mention it, but the villager I decided to put next to mine house is Ed because he has a white exterior with a blue roof, I think. And also he's my absolute favorite villager. He's my baby. He's never moving off the island. So obviously I wanted him to be living next door to me. And I know I cut through a lot of stuff because now we're at the next day and Ed is moved in and I've put down a whole bunch of stuff, but I was mostly just running around because at this point of the build I was able to properly decorate because I had everything done and I had my layout complete, so I was able to put in the fine details. And so I was just running back and forth, running around, running to the shops and back. And yeah, so I figured I saved you the trouble and cut out most of that so that way it doesn't bore you too much. And also I really wanted to put down a bench since I went into this build with the idea that I might make the pond bigger. So with a lake you need a bench to sit and stare at the water, so I wanted to make sure I included that. And I also added in a couple details to the actual lavender field. I decided to add in a scarecrow, so I did that so that way there was some vertical height. And I'm also going to be decorating Ed's house as well in this video, so that way this whole area is basically complete. I put down a bunch of weeds here and there. Some of them will get picked up and I'll plant flowers there instead, but I figured I'd add some of them for the time being. And now we are working on Ed's house. The first thing that I did was extend the plank pathway to the door, since when I did it the first time I didn't really do it properly, so I'm fixing that up. And for his house we're doing a very simple yard since it's sort of added on to the lavender field, so I wanted just to give him some seating and I decided to put a stall in front of the house next to where that tree is, the cedar tree, and we're going to give him a little sort of shop that he runs maybe, you know. I'm not really too sure, we're just kind of going with it. And Sherb was being so cute, just like hanging around here watching me work, and kind of did end up watering the plants a little bit, not that there's any use for it, but look how cute he looks. He's such a baby. He's so cute. I'm also planting some of the pink camellia shrubs since I've run out of all my fully grown ones and now I've had to resort to planting them because I've used them all. I think I had close to 50, maybe over 50 planted already from when I flattened the island the first time around. So yeah, that's sort of what happens when you're almost done with the island. Speaking of, we are almost done with this island. We only have a little bit more left to go, so I'm gonna have to get moving because I kind of want to start my new island soon. Because I'll be honest, I've come to the point where I kind of want to try out a different aesthetic, so eventually we will. Right now, I'm just building up some pathway that's leading up towards the campsite area. That was, I think, the last video that I uploaded, so I'll leave a little card for that if you want to check that out. But I didn't do it too much since I wasn't too sure exactly what I wanted to put here. I also was debating putting the silo down. That was one of my original plans that I had going into this build, but I just wasn't able to really fit it in anywhere, so I decided to leave it for now. For Ed's yard, I decided to decorate it pretty simply for the time being, so that way it kind of doesn't take away from the lavender field. And I'm considering maybe in the future extending his yard out onto the beach next to his house, since it is right on the beach and he doesn't really have much of a yard, and I kind of feel bad because he is my favorite villager, and your favorite villager kind of gets the best deal. So we might end up making him a little something on the beach, but that will happen once I've cleared it, because right now it's being used as flower storage. I decided to surround his house with plants for the time being until I figure out something a little bit more special for him. But I always catch him around the island watering all my flowers, and I often see him reading up on flowers with his little magnifying glass. So for the time being, I just wanted to play it off of that. I don't know exactly what I will do, but I might make him something special on the beach later on. We'll see. If you have any ideas, I would love to know them. So yeah, we're now just finishing up. I'm putting down my mush lamps. I also realized that I had two that were sort of identical to each other, and I don't like that, so I'm changing up the orientation, and then that is it. So here is the final reveal. And that is it for today's video. Let me know what you think. I absolutely love this build. I think it might be in my top 3 favorites. So yeah, let me know what your favorite part was, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a like. It helps me out a lot. And if you enjoyed today's video and would like to see more from me in the future and you're not already subscribed, I would love it if you did, so that way you don't miss out on any future uploads. I hope you have a wonderful day or night. I love you all so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.